Welcome back to PSC's Tech Byte. Today we keep on talking about how to consume Microsoft Graph from an iOS application using Swift in Xcode. And specifically today I will show you the initial steps to set up your project in Xcode in order to being able to consume Microsoft Graph and in order to get an access token via MSAL. And in order to do that, you simply need to create a project. You will have to configure the MSAL library via CocoaPods. You will have to open the XC workspace file generated by CocoaPods in order to load your project together with the pods you installed, specifically MSAL in this scenario, and eventually the Microsoft Graph client SDK. And once you have done that, you will have to configure in Azure Active Directory an application which you will use to access Microsoft Graph and to get an access token to access Microsoft Graph. And you will have to do some small changes to the project settings in order to being able to properly use MSAL. So let's move to the demo environment and let's see how to do that in practice. So let me create a new project in Xcode. It will be a project for iOS as the target platform, and it will be an app. Clicking on Next, I will provide the name for my product, so PSC's Tech Byte Graph Consumer 01 for example, and I'm going to use the storyboard as the interface and Swift as the target language. Then I will target the GitHub folder on my file system to store the solution, and now I'm ready with my solution project. I just want to highlight you this item, the bundle identifier, which will be really useful later on when configuring the application in Azure Active Directory. So now let me switch to the terminal, to the Rosetta terminal, and let me show you that here in my document folder in the GitHub subfolder we have the folder for the project we have just created. So we can go here, and in this folder we are going to create a pod file. So using Finder, I'm in the folder, and let me access the main folder where I have the Xcode proj file. And here, let me reduce this item, I'm going to copy a pod file. Let me show you the content of this pod file. Here I'm simply saying that I want to get the pod of MSAL using the syntax of the pod file. This will be the name of my project, of the product that I created in Xcode. So I can save this file and I can simply proceed to set up the pods for this project. How can we do that? Well, we can simply say pod install in the folder where we have the pod file. It will take a while, a little bit, and after that, as you can see now, we have MSAL installed in my target project. If I go back to the folder, I can see that now we have an XC workspace file. We can open this file with Xcode, and now we will see the whole solution, in which we also have the pods folder, and here we can see that we have MSAL available in our solution. Okay? So, now let me open the project itself. And here we can see that in the PSC's Tech Byte Graph Consumer 01 project, we have all of the Swift files ready to go for our storyboard UI-based application. And just for the sake of it, let me target, for example, an iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now we are ready to register the application in Azure Active Directory. So let me switch to my browser. And here we have the Azure Active Directory management UI. I can go under app registration and I can create a new registration, which will be for the same application name that I just created in Azure Active Directory. Of course, here you can provide whatever name you like, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to use exactly the same. And I will target the Azure Active Directory authentication single tenant. Okay, I can click on register. We can keep track of the information that we have here just in case of need, like the client ID and the tenant ID. But we need to go to the authentication section and we need to add support for a new platform. The new platform will be iOS and macOS. And here we have to provide the bundle ID that we have in the project right here. So let me copy this value and let me paste it here, right here in the UI, and click on configure. And as such, the application will be configured to use the Azure Active Directory authentication within an iOS application. And as you can see here, we have an MSIL configuration section, which will become really useful in a matter of few seconds from now while configuring our iOS application in Xcode. So now we can go back to Xcode, and first of all, let me copy this item. So copy, and let me go back here. Well, we can first of all go to all of the Swift files that we have, and we can import MSIL. So import MSIL here, import MSIL here, and import MSIL here. Then, just before the view_did_load function, we can paste the values that we copied from Azure Active Directory. And still in Azure Active Directory, we can go to the PI permission section, and we can say, for example, that we want a delegated permission for Microsoft Graph in order to access the calendar of the user. So let me search for calendar. Here we are. And let me add calendars.read. And that's it. So that now we can go back to Xcode and we can configure, for example, a new variable, which we can call case scopes, for example, which will be an array of strings, and the content of this array will be a set of values like user.read, for example, which is the permission that we have, as well as calendars.read, which is the other permission that we have in our Azure Active Directory application that we just registered. So far, these are the main settings that I want to store in my application. But we also need to do a couple of changes to the configuration of application. The first one is to go to the project, to the solution settings, and under signing and capabilities, we need to add a new capability, which will be the capability related to keychain sharing. And here we are going to add this capability because we want to allow the MSIL library to store in a safe way the tokens retrieved using open authorization in the Azure Active Directory. So in order to do that, we will need to provide a new value here, and the value will be com.microsoft.adal cache. Okay, we have to provide this value. Once we have done that, we also need to open the info.plist file as a source code file in order to see the actual source code of the file. And let me copy from a snippet that I have on my file system right here. We want to add this section to the info.plist file that we have. So let me open it back. And here, right after the UI application scene manifest, we are going to add this section as well. Here we will have to provide the name of our project, actually the bundle ID, as you can see here. And by doing that, we will have the whole project configured to use MSIL to store the access token in the local cache and to get an access token from Azure Active Directory. In the upcoming episodes, we will see how to use MSIL in practice to get an access token and how to use it to make an actual HTTP request targeting Microsoft Graph. Like always, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. And remember, subscribe to this channel. Thank you.